Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to have you here today. My name is Cyndy McDonald, and I'm a producer, I'm an entrepreneur, and an educator. I've been working with students for over 30 years and love to bring to you these Friday forums. It's an opportunity where I get to have conversations with really great professionals, experts in subjects that matter to you. And so today, as you're joining us, I want you to introduce yourself to my guest, Chris Andersson. And Chris is somebody we've known each other for quite a while. I've watched you transition from working at NYU and the Tisch School into a fully fledged IC and everything in between. And so as you're coming in, let Chris know where you're from. And also if you work with or have worked with performing arts students. So those are our questions for today. Today is Veterans Day. I don't know if in your area your students have today off. Mine do. So as soon as we're done with this session, I'm going to be working with all my students. I have application workshops on Veterans Day every year. I find it's a wonderful day because the students don't have school, they don't have practice, they don't have any other commitments usually on this Friday. So it's kind of that bonus day. And I'm just really glad to be able to honor our veterans today. You know, many of you fall in that category or know or honor people in your family or your world that do that. So we're glad to have you here. And Chris, we're so glad to have you here too. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's so exciting to read as everybody's putting in their information. That's great. It's so nice to see all of you. Thanks for coming.
We're glad, and we have people from four corners of not only the US, but also from around the world. So you'll get to see all these different places that people come from. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what your journey has been in performing arts, Chris.
Well, it all began, I think, when I was 9 and I played a proper noun in The Missing Parts of Speech, a great mystery. In 4th grade. And it's ever since then, I think that my involvement in the arts, primarily in performing arts, has been as an actor, both just in my own in high school and then in college. And I majored in theater and dance at Trinity College, and then went on to perform here in New York City for many, many years. And that was my primary role, I think, as an artist. I did do some directing, did some producing. Now I'm working with a theater company, and I'm on the board of New York City's oldest and longest producing LGBTQIA plus theater company. So it's more of a kind of the work we do, it's called The Other Side of Silence, and it's more presenting now. So I've been, performing on stage, but now it's more about making the theater happen, in a lot of ways. So it's been nice to have different roles over the course of my career, I think, because it gives you just a greater breadth of understanding of the field,
Well, and expose you to all those different aspects and gives you that 360 view so that as you're working with students or families, you can say you've come from this or you've experienced that, or give them some of understanding of that aspect.
Right.
So when did you start working with students as performers?
I guess it was about, well, it's a long time ago. If I said the word 30, I'll let you all take it from there. But it was that many ago. But I
already
started
used that word, so
woo! But I did start work. I started working with them. I was running a theater program for Trinity College, here in New York. I mean, the program was in New York at La Mama, which is a big experimental theater. And it was students from college students coming to New York City to study experimental performance. And I started that in 1994, worked for them for many years, and then had a couple of other jobs. I worked at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center up in Connecticut, doing their recruitment to bring students to their college programs. And then my last was also a long stretch was as the director of admissions for the drama department at NYU Tisch. And that was me overseeing the whole artistic review process and kind of hosting the auditions. And I learned, okay, there's the year thing and then there's the volume thing. And I once did the math, and I said, I figured out that in those years that I was there, was 12 years at NYU, I welcomed over 25,000 students to their artistic reviews. I mean, that's an insane number. I mean, I did a lot of the auditions myself, but I mean, we had all the teachers doing them too, but oh my goodness, it's a lot. So that's, I guess it's been 30 years of working with primarily theater students in those capacities. But then along the way at Tisch, I became an IEC, an independent educational consultant, and I started working with performing arts students in theater, and eventually I grew to working with film students as well, and also dramatic writing students. And so students who are applying to undergraduate or graduate programs in those fields. And it was, I did it while I was at NYU, and eventually I just moved into it full time. So that's what I do now, and I love it.
Well, I know that the students and the families and other people are very glad to have you there, because you bring such a level of knowledge and expertise and empathy to this too. Do you work with students in other countries as well? Not only going from other countries to the United States, or vice versa, going from the United States to, programs in other countries too?
Yes, both directions, I would say. I have students that come from all over the country and then all over the world that are looking at US schools. So that's been a lot of fun. And then there are students, what I am continually increasing my knowledge about are English language arts programs around the world. So students looking at the UK, looking at Canada, looking at parts of Europe, Ireland, and Australia, New Zealand, and that goes for both U.S. students and international students who are looking at those places to study too. So it's been another nice way to expand the work that I do in becoming more understanding of the UCAS system in the UK, and those kinds of things, and what schools are out there.
Well, that sounds, having a tour where people could go and visit those programs sounds like a really great opportunity for the future.
Yes, that's a good idea.
I would sign up, Chris. I would sign up.
Down.
New Zealand's next on my list. So going back to your background experience, you've seen lots of trends and things come and go. And, most recently, we're now coming out of the COVID. It's hopefully in our rearview mirrors. If you have total mind control, what myths or falsehoods would you erase from parents or students' minds about pursuing a degree in performing arts? Or even us as counselors?
Yeah.
Those myths that you would like to see erased.
I think that a big myth that I would like to dispel just about studying, like I said, pursuing a degree in the arts, is that maybe a degree in the arts is not valuable, because there's so much to studying the performing arts and studying that will help you in a lot of different ways, like not only help you in that field, but also just life. Sometimes we used to say that let's say if it was with actors, we're training actors, but it's really training for life, because they are learning life skills as part of that actor training, right? They're learning about teamwork and collaboration and pulling their weight, the responsibilities that come with working together on a project. Some of the training is very introspective. It's very they're kind of digging around inside themselves. It makes them a little bit more emotionally available, a little freer to do the work that they need to do. But that kind of also helps when they're interacting with other people. They learn improvisation skills so that they could really answer any question you could throw at them. There's a lot that will help them in interviews, but also in other lines of work. If you're going to be a teacher, you have a classroom of little 8-year-olds and you have to keep them entertained for 6 hours. That's one long performance, right? And trial lawyers and customer service people and public speaking, positions, politics, so there are a lot of ways to use these skills even outside of theater, but even within theater, within all the arts, really, frankly, with dance, with music, with film, there are a lot of jobs within that field that that help to make the art happen. So again, I often default to talking through theater because that's been my main, but it applies to other arts, is that sure, a lot of students come into theater as an actor because they're doing their school plays, and that's how they know it. But when they study it, it starts to open up ideas that maybe they're like acting, but maybe they're more of a director, or maybe they're a writer or a producer or a combination of those things. There are people, when you go to a show on Broadway, a one-person show, there are a lot of people in that theater that are working to make that happen. The backstage people, the set, the lighting and sound people up in the booth with the stage manager that are watching and making all of that happen, the people moving the scenery, the people at the front of the house, the producers of the show, the directors and the designers. There's so many ways to be in, and that's only in theater. Think of film sets, think of orchestras, so there's a lot of ways to be in these fields, or to be in other fields that, and a training in the performing arts will really benefit you. Really just, I think, benefit. I was thinking of I'm not gonna. Okay, I'm going to say it really fast. I when I was first in New York City, and I was doing temp work, and I would go in, and just starting out, so they put me on answering the phones. And the first 3 gigs, I was asked before the day was over, the HR person came down and said, "Hey, would you like a full-time job?" And I was like, and the 3rd gig happened to be a place where a friend of mine from childhood worked, and I was like, "Could you explain to me, like, why are they?" She says, "Chris, I mean, that some of the things you're bringing to this, just answering the phones with your theater background, is really good, because you're comfortable talking, and you're a good communicator, and you're able to basically kind of perform in a way." So she said that's a lot different from what we've been getting, and that may be why that's happening. So those skills really do help. So I think there's a lot of value. That's where I'm going. A lot of value in arts training. But not only for the arts themselves, but this other stuff too. But the arts, of course, is the paramount, because it's just helpful for you to develop as an artist through performing arts study.
I think that's very valuable, and that is something that we can share with parents and students, because we hear that myth all the time. What are they going to do with an acting degree? What are they going to do with a performing arts degree? They're going to be a starving artist. That's one of the other myths that you hear. But so many students go into these different areas, and then they'll pivot, or they'll use it in all these different ways, as you explained. I think an attorney is a great, a trial attorney is a great example, because you have to have that presence. You have to be able to tell a story. You need to be able to communicate and be comfortable in front of people, or in front of audiences, or in front of, a camera. And our world is shifting so much. And that's one of the things from COVID, is that we're shifting to much more of a visual, and we're already doing that. I mean, Blink, there are lots of books written about that, but being able to communicate and correspond through the visual, and there's so many different ways. I remember as a high school student, I was on our forensics team. Never occurred to me to go into acting or anything else, but I did what was called original oratory. So you wrote a speech and you gave it out loud. I feel like that has directed me and made me comfortable enough to do what I do now, and so I can see that as a very valuable thing. I have a friend whose daughter did an art degree. She ended up working for a welding company because she knew how to create, art and sculptures and talk about it in a way that could talk to people who weren't welders. So
Mhm.
you just never know how you're going to use that. So on the other side, with that same mind control, what truths would you like to impart to parents and students?
I would say, I would say a kind of like the concept of you are enough as an artist. If you're an artist, you're an artist. And you do your art to the extent that you can do it, given your schedule, given your life, given your resources, you do it. You're just going to do it. And I think sometimes students get a bit, maybe some get insecure about, I'm at a school that doesn't have a theater department, or doesn't have a dance department. I want to be a dancer, but they don't have a dance department, and so we're not doing dance concerts throughout the year. And I go to these other, maybe they're going to auditions and they're seeing or they're hearing other students talk about all the great artwork they're able to do in their school. And then they start to feel like, am I going to be able to kind of keep up with that? Am I going to be behind these people that have had really great programs where they've been able to do shows or play music or do all of this? And I think, you're going to create art in whatever way you can. If you're a writer, you don't need a laptop. You can write on paper. If you don't have a movie camera, if you're fortunate enough to have access to a smartphone, you could make a little film. But I will tell you this, when I was at NYU and I would sit on panels with the film department, the film and TV production department at Tisch, they would say, you don't ever have to have made a film to come to our program. This is for the undergraduate film program.
Wow.
We are going to teach you how to do that. That's what we're here to do. You may never have picked up a camera. We're going to put you a camera in your hands on the first day of school, but we can teach you that. What we want to know about you through our artistic review process is who you are as a storyteller, right? What do you want to make art about? What things are going on in the world that are causing things in your brain to go, I want to make a piece about this. What are you passionate about? How would you creatively approach something? So they'll notice, like in the film portfolios, for example. I mean, I'm straying from performing arts a little bit, but it still applies. They're all mostly writing assignments in those film portfolios. Sure, you can submit a film too, but they want to see how you tell stories, and that goes to all the arts: dancers, musicians, writers, directors, designers, actors, filmmakers. Is that we are storytellers. We're just in different media, but we are storytellers. And so I feel like each of us, I would say to the students at NYU when they were coming for their auditions, and I would say the best advice I can give you is to be yourself. It sounds cheesy, but you are the most unique when you're being yourself. You want to know how to stand out? Be you. Don't think about what they want to hear. Don't think about who you should be or what you should say. Just be true and honest you, and that's how you're going to stand out. And I want them to value who they are, because that's the important way to approach this, applying to these programs. It's hard. We all know feels very competitive, this college application process. The audition process is maybe different from the portfolio submissions because you're just kind of sending them off. But auditions for dancers and actors and singers, you're in with all these other people, and that messes with your mind. So you should just remember, I am enough. I am who I am. I'm cool. I want to just show them how cool I am, Anyway, the thought.
And it is, especially for teenagers or students coming into this process, it is so easy to could be intimidated, have that imposter syndrome. And that speaks to what you were talking about before. Even like right now, as we have students who are setting up interviews or doing videos, maybe we'll see more of that with the whole change in tests optional and the race and admissions shift, that students need to be able to share who they are and be comfortable with that on a camera. Now, they're doing, most of them are familiar or have lots of experience doing selfies and things like that on their phones. So at least that's still another way of building that expertise. So Carmen, it looks like we have a question, and I see what the question is, and we'll go into this, but I do want to mention I have a whole nother interview that I'm going to make available to all of you that I'm done with Chris on for my UCLA class about the difference between BFA, BA, conservatories, that kind of thing. So we're not going to talk about that today, but I have all of that on another interview, and we'll put that in the show notes, and we'll make that available. But Carmen, we can go ahead and cover this question from Patricia. So go ahead.
Sure. So are there collegiate pathways or foundation programs for international performers, I believe? And are there some lesser known, less selective colleges that help actors, dancers, and musicians to polish their artistic professions?
So with that, I would say the pathway thing is where I see it more is in the UK. They have these foundational courses. Their trajectory for university is usually 3 years. But if a student isn't, let's say, an international applicant, is maybe depending on their schooling and where they are, if they're not quite ready to begin that 3-year course, they often offer foundational courses to kind of help the student kind of get up to speed so they can be ready. So then it would be a 4-year trajectory if they were to study over there. And they do have that for performing arts students, certainly with actors, as foundational acting courses at many of the acting schools over there offer that as kind of a pathway. And I would say too, here, as far as there are a lot of programs here, in performing arts at the college level in the US. And I think so, I'm constantly encouraging our students to look beyond the top ones, because when if for nothing else, there's small programs. They may take 16 students in a BFA program or 20 students, right? Or so these are the small, and they would have, say, maybe 2,000 applicants. So 2,000 applicants for 20 spots, that's 1% of those students are going to land in that program. That's nuts. So I'm constantly, encouraging my students to widen their scopes. As you're saying, there are lots of schools that have BFA programs and BA programs in performing arts areas that are absolutely worth considering. It's not just those couple of ones, because if the number, if you've got 16 at this one and 16 at this one and 24 at this one, I mean, you add those all up, there's still a lot more students applying to programs. So to just think about that and widening the scope of schools, kind of in a way as you would normally for if a student was applying to the liberal arts programs in those programs, I think.
Well, I think this is a great place where you can mention what you've done and what you have available through your Instagram accounts and things like that to highlight some of these programs. So tell us a little bit more about that, Chris.
That's great. Thank you. What we started doing about 3 years ago is just creating slides on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn is where these appear. And so I was doing research on theater programs, film programs, summer high school programs. And so we would spotlight a school each week. And it's just a few slides in each of the posts, but they're about what majors are offered what the artistic review requirements are, if there are audition or portfolio requirements for a school. If it's the summer high school programs, it's what ages are available, what arts disciplines does this program offer, where is it, what are the application requirements there. So it's a great thing to they're just surface. The purpose of those was for students to just pique their interest, so they would go and research more on the school's or programs websites. But it was at least to start to make, just to have them out there, the names of these programs out there. So it's they're great. They're on all three of those: Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And they're very bright and colorful, like you can't miss them. It's pretty much mostly all we do. So you'll just have a nice range of them. And each of those, the theater school, the film school, and the summer high school programs, have a slightly different look, but they're unique to that. So you can kind of find, if you're looking for something specific, you can kind of, tootle through.
And I love that it's oriented towards students, because then as a counselor and advisor, as parents, we can say, here, go look at these, learn more. And also the fact that it's an opportunity to just kind of dip their toe and say, here's something, now go learn more, go do your own research, go look at it, but it gives them a starting point. So that makes a big difference. So before we get to this next question, I can see it up here, Carmen, let me ask my next question, because I think it feeds into this a little bit. What are some upcoming trends that you see in performing arts? I think a lot was accentuated during COVID. We discovered we can do things virtually. We all had virtual performances, and students doing orchestra, performing arts, different things like that. So what are those future trends? And then also, in the news, we just had the actors guilds in LA. They just came to an agreement, and that's part of the future trend as well. So what are some of those things that you're keeping track of, Chris?
Well, I would say that one of the good things that came out of the struggles during the pandemic to figure out how to do this, like you said, when the schools realized that they really could do this whole artistic process online, maybe was it the most ideal, maybe not, but they were, for a couple of years, able to bring in classes just like they had before. So a lot of schools that had not offered robust online or digital submission type auditions, let's say, now since COVID, everybody does, and it's still a major part of their artistic reviews, not kind of a side thing. So makes it so much easier for families, and it's now proven, so you can't even really say it's any kind of secondary thing, right? It's like, I live in LA and I'm auditioning for school in New York. I'm in school. It's so much easier for me not to fly there. It helps the families out tremendously. And I think that schools have kept a lot more virtual. You can see when you're looking to reserve your artistic review appointment, there's a lot of digital options, a lot of virtual options, I should say. So that's been a really wonderful thing going forward, it's just easier for everybody. I would say, yeah, there's the actors and writers strike that just happened, and the writers, they settled earlier, but the actors, this is with SAG and AFTRA. SAG is the Screen Actors Guild, which is for people working in the film industry, and AFTRA is the Association of Federated Radio and Television Artists, and that is for TV, mostly for TV and radio. So the stage actors equity were not really part of that, because one of so it was more the SAG after the TV and film actors that were striking. And not only was it to kind of shift the balance of compensation to give them a bigger piece of the pie and all the other things that they were after. But one of the big things in the news you may have read is this whole AI thing, this whole artificial intelligence moving forward. And there was a big question for them where studios were saying, well, we have the technology to take your face, take your image, and take your voice and manipulate it into new content. And if they had their druthers, they're like, this is awesome because we could create a promo for a show without having to bring the actor in and pay them anything. This is simplifying this, of course. And then the actors are like, oh, no, that is not going to happen. So they're like, this was a big moment for them to protect the future of the industry for the artists that are in it. So I encourage certainly any if the students that are here, families that are here, but students to research that. It just happened this week, so I don't have a whole lot I can say about it myself, but it would be really an interesting thing because it, as far as the changing, I mean, AI is affecting us in a lot of ways, but that for that industry and an industry that you might be interested in, it would be worth understanding kind of how that could affect it, and then how did they land? What did they? That's the part that I don't know so much because it's so recent. Is what did they? Where did they land with that? Like, is there a payment schedule, or are they? I don't even know if they were like absolutely not, no, never. I'm not sure where it landed because it just happened, but research.
Yeah. And we're, it's right now in terms of AI, it's really very much the wild, wild west because we don't know where it's going to go or what it's going to look like. And people haven't even conceived. I mean, there are things that it's going to be able to do and we haven't even thought of yet. And so, and I feel like that's going to spill over into our students. I mean, we already see that, and we've had those discussions this year about writing essays. So that's going to become, how do students use AI to be a storyteller or, share their, consolidate things, make things faster, easier. So Carmen, now you can go ahead with your question from Katie.
Sure. So what are your tips for the supplementals to help students organize and showcase their work?
That is a good question. As far as any student who is applying to a program with an artistic review, and I keep throwing that term around. When I say artistic review, it's just a slightly broader term because it encompasses auditions and portfolio work. So if you're a filmmaker, if you're a writer, if you're a director, if you're a designer, you're going to be submitting stage manager portfolios. If you're a musician, a dancer, an actor, a singer, vocalist, you're going to be doing auditions. So artistic review kind of encompasses that. Doing that, in a lot of cases, the schools are like, that's what we're using to evaluate you. That's what we're using to make an assessment of where you are in your own artistic development at this moment in time. And that's all we need. If you're applying to a program, to a school, and you're interested in let's say their BA program, which does not require an artistic review most of the time, they may say, yeah, you could submit an art supplement, right? You can show us what you do. That would be fine. And sometimes the BA programs even ask admissions to, like, we want them to, even though they're not really applying to our department quite yet, we'd love it if they're interested to write a little artist statement. So that's another thing to do. And I think it's whether you upload some videos of what you do as an artist, if you're playing the flute, or if you're singing a song, or you're doing a monologue to support your whole application, or you're writing an artist statement. I think similar things apply to other writing supplements and other parts of the application, where each component, each piece is another opportunity for the admissions team to get to know you and who you are. And if the art that you do is a big part of you, you want to showcase that, then do that. Just do it in a way that for you, because they're not, it's not necessarily going to make or break, right? Because they're not saying if you have a good art supplement, you got to get into the, but it's more information. So I would say still put forward good stuff that really represents you as an artist. Don't think about what you should give them, like, or what you think they want. You have no idea what they want. So I would say if you're very honestly representing yourself as an artist, so you're like, you want to know what I do as an artist? This is what I do. This is the stuff I do, the stuff I do well, the stuff I love to do, the stuff that brings me great joy. I would present that, either if it's written or if it's visual or audio clips or things like that.
Would you include like links to Instagram or YouTube or those kinds of things as well? Because those are going to be the areas, in these up and coming trends. I was just reading an article the other day about, YouTube stars who are children, and they're the new mini millionaires. And, my granddaughters who are 7 are so excited because there's a YouTube star at their school that they didn't even realize that they follow. So, using those kinds of links, is that something that's being accepted and used, or is that frowned upon?
I think if a student's going to link to a social media account, and I think we probably all know this, right, is that you have to make sure you know what's on that account all the way back, and make sure if you're going to, if you have created an Instagram account to showcase you as a singer, so you're like, yeah, all the stuff on my YouTube account is just me singing songs. Okay, that's one thing. A lot of times, designers and stage managers, so production and design students, will have built a website with their work on it. So it's photographs of their costumes that they've built. It's images of the sketches for costumes that they've made. They kind of putting their portfolio in a way online. Mm-hmm. So they, at NYU, we even said, if you have a website for all of the work that you do as a lighting designer, feel free to give us the link. So I think if it's something that's purposefully created for this process, might be a better way to go in that way. So that, but because that's another thing, right, with the YouTube channels or things like that you can create it specifically. It's like students will create like an email account just for their college search, right? You could do a similar thing this way. That might be the best way to go. And yes, you're right. In this day and age, no reason not to, and then you're like, here you go. Here's the link. You don't have to read anything. Here's a link. Just go there.
Yep.
I'm sure they like it too,
Everything that I need to say or do,
Mm-hmm.
Here's my 3 values. Here you go. But you bring up a really good point. And this is part of what we want to talk about today is, the new trends, the myths and the facts. If you are using social media, an artistic review, you get to curate what's going into that, what you want them to see and what you think is valuable and best represents you. But when you do a social media, if it's not specific for those reasons, then it's all or nothing. And that may not be, to your advantage at all. So that is a very good point. So my next question for you is, we talked about it a little bit. Are there other ways that these upcoming trends affect students who are pursuing a fine arts degree? They should be aware of what they put out there, what they curate, what they expose. What about them using AI for their creative process? Or what are there other things that they should be aware of? Can you think of?
That is really an interesting question about what you put through in there at the end. Should they use AI themselves? Like, that's like scary to hear, because on one, maybe scary is not quite the right word, but it's like, ooh, because in the arts, I mean, well, when you think about it, if you hear a singer from whenever they started manipulating people's singing voices, you hear Judy Garland, singing on a recording, it's just her singing on a recording. But you move into more modern times, and they're the technicians, the recording engineers are able to, if someone's slightly off or they want to extend a note that they held and they're like, we actually needed to go a little bit longer so it matches the music, they can do all of that and manipulate it, and then it becomes less authentic in a way of the performance, or they change the tone of the voice or whatever. And if I feel like if you're an artist, if you're a student who wants to go to an art school and you're saying this is what I do, if you were to use AI to manipulate your presentation, that's like, ooh, I never even thought of that. Cyndy, like thinking of it that way, that's like what would that do? Because it's then all of a sudden they're presenting a false sense of themselves, like as a singer, as a, there are certain things that I think, I don't know, that they couldn't, like if you're acting you're doing a monologue is maybe one thing, but if you're singing, to be able to manipulate the sound, I mean, it also, you have to say how proficient are they to do all of that?
Right. Exactly. They may be doing it in a very rough way that is very obvious. But that's why we're in this wild west category right now. And, just as some colleges are considered or have put on their applications this year, you have to disclose if you use AI to help you write your essay. Maybe that'll be part of some of not only performing arts, but some other aspects too. So it'll be interesting to see how that all falls out, because if anybody's going to think of it, students are going to think of it, right?
Yeah. And when you think about just the concept of lip syncing, it's been around for a long time, right? Or dubbing, your voice over. If you are a flautist and you're playing, who's to say you're not submitting a recording of somebody else? Your sound's off. You're able to do the fingerings to convince us that it's you, but maybe it's not. I mean, yeesh. Okay, scary. Scary Friday.
Yes. All right. So it looks like we're going to switch gears here a little bit and talk a little bit more about specifics. Go ahead, Carmen.
I have two students interested in the backstage, specifically lighting design and stage managing. Both live in Manhattan. Can you suggest any campus for them to explore these categories? So many campuses don't seem to offer the behind the scenes piece for high school students.
And I think she's asking about like high school camps, summer camps, that kind of thing.
Right. Specifically, if it's in the New York City area, I mean, just because I know the school so well, I'm not plugging it. It's just that NYU has a summer high school program that NYU has two things. NYU has a summer high school program. It's a 4-week thing, and that has space for performers and also production and design students. But they also have, I think it's a spring semester, like Saturday program that's free for, area students, if you can make it there. One year when I was there, a student would come down from Buffalo to do this program, but that they were committed to it. But it was great because it was a free program, and that I would hope still includes the production and design kids, because it did then too. So that's a good question. You're right, there are fewer. I would say pop into the social media thing that we did, because we do list what disciplines each summer high school program that we spotlight does offer. And so there are ones, but of course we're looking nationally, so they're all over the place. Off the top of my head, those are the ones that come to mind. If others come as we continue our conversation, I'll shout them out. But
and if people need to get a hold of you, want to have some questions or collaborate with you, how do they do that, Chris?
You can with my you can email me directly. You can which is Chris@nothingbutdrama.com. The website is nothingbutdrama.com. And you can see
Tell me
kind of
that again.
and in the website, I kind of talk about how I collaborate with people. If you're an IEC, I've either sometimes an IEC will say, hey, listen, I'm working with a family on the application side. I really don't know a lot about this, about theater. Can I send them to you to work on that? So that because they're two parallel processes that are happening. It's twice the work for students, families, and the counselor. So if you're like, I want to do this side, Chris, can you do this side? We can partner together. Sometimes a consultant will say, I'm totally full, and this film family just walked in the door. Can you just take them on completely? And I can do that too. I can do the application and artistic review as well. So just reach out, and there's ways through the website, if you are a counselor, that you can set up a little counselor chat with me too, if you wanted to discuss anything.
Well, that brings us to actually 3 more questions that I want to fire off to you. So how can we help students and parents be realistic in their expectations? So, we all have this just in college applications in general. They all have the top 20, 40, and as you said, it's a 1% acceptance rate in some of these programs. So how do you help families be realistic, and the correlating question of that, creating a balanced list as a part of that?
Yes, those good. You're right. That's good. Those go together. I would say one, yeah, we already touched on that so many of the BFA programs, specifically the ones that you're doing an audition, or portfolio review at the time of application. A lot of those are very small programs, so it's worth looking wider than the top ones and extending that, because they're really, like I said, a lot of great programs out there. So to understand that, and because there are a lot of great programs out there, if you don't get into Michigan, you're not one of the 16 lucky ones in the musical theater program at Michigan, your life is not over. If that happens to be a dream school, sure, put it on the list, and put other schools that are that you like, that programs that you like, that are on the list. But when we realize how many students, many very talented students, are not getting into these programs, so that's a thing to remember. And it's not your talent, it's that they could only pick 16. So there are plenty of you out there that are great and super talented, but you may not get in there because it's a 1% situation. And so the way to build your list, one is to think a little bit more broadly. The other is to make sure, this is my consistent advice, is if you want to apply to some BFA programs that require artistic reviews, you also have to have a good amount of BA programs where there's no audition required, no artistic review at all. You're just have to get into the school, and then you're at the school, and then when you're ready to declare your major, and maybe at the end of sophomore year, you're saying, I want to be a theater major, I want to be a dance major, I want to be you're just declaring it. And they say, great, wonderful, we're so happy to have you in the dance department. You're not auditioning to be in it, So I think that balance is extremely important, because we want them to go to college. And we don't want to put all our eggs in the BFA basket, because that is way too scary. It is a subjective process. You have no idea how it's going to go. And the numbers are small. So there's too much that, it's a whole other hoop to jump through. And it's kind of it's a big hoop. And there are a lot of wonderful programs. We won't go into the differences, but BFA and BA are not, one is not better than the other. They're just different ways of learning, and they're different depths, and one's more specialized and one's more broad. There are wonderful BA programs out there. There are a small handful that require auditions, so just be aware of that. But I think having that balance of BA and BFA programs, if that's what the student is interested in, is super important in building that list. And then just look, like we do with just colleges and universities in general, look wider,
Well, and sometimes wouldn't you get, just like in many other areas like research or things like that, if you get into one of these BA programs that you don't have to audition and you're able to do whatever, dance, theater, music, whatever, you get an opportunity to shine maybe a little sooner and a little bit more than you would if you were in one of these highly selective programs. And would that benefit the student in some ways?
I think it could, like, I went to Trinity College and I did a BA in theater and dance. There were 3 of us who graduated from that department my year. 3. 2 of us were more theater focused, 1 was more dance focused. We're still friends to this day, but it did. And now it was a small department. We didn't do a million shows, but I think by the end of my sophomore year, I had done 8 substantial shows, and then lots of other little bits and pieces, and I had parts in all of them. And I'm like, I mean, as a first year student, I was performing. And like I said, by the end of sophomore year, I had a decent amount of performing under my belt. So the small department was great because they kept using us over and over and over because they didn't have a lot of people. So that it may be that way in the BFAs sometimes if it's small. However, very often you're not performing in the first year because they're giving you some foundational training that they want to you incorporate that the training, you add in the productions a little later, so you can kind of take what you're learning in the studio and apply it to performance. That's something that's happening a little later. Whereas in the BA, they were like, you just got here in September, we have a show coming up, you want to audition? Sure. And then I think Spring Awakening was the first show that I did, actually, with the play Spring Awakening. Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits to the BA program. So there's a lot more freedom too that you can bring in. You're studying other stuff at the same time and bringing that back in, and so it's all good.
Yeah. I know that, like, I experienced this firsthand with my son who went off as a theater major. We have a very strong theater program at his high school. And so he went to Southern Utah University. They have the Utah Shakespeare Festival there on campus. So they often use students in other plays, not the Shakespeare, but other plays and, green room performances and those kinds of things. So he went off as a theater major, and he was not only was he doing plays at the very beginning, but then they got him into dance too. And he ended up on 2 ballroom dance teams because he had that theater background and stuff. And the department said, well, he'd never been a lead because we had such a strong high school program. They were all amazed that he'd never had a lead. And it was like a piece of cake for him. And eventually he switched to creative writing, and now he's in computer science.
Oh my goodness.
So you just never know. these directions, these paths give them, confidence, opportunities, versatility, so many abilities. But I remember having that experience with him. He went in and just automatically, and he would never have done that at a highly competitive, theater program. Right.
That's a really, really good point to make. Yeah. Because it can be very intimidating.
Yeah. It's like doing research. You never get to do research until you're a junior, senior, if you're at UC Berkeley, for example. But if you go to, the smaller, more liberal arts school, you'll get that opportunity. So, all right. So, go ahead. Let's go with this last question. This touched on what you talked about a little bit earlier. There's so many more aspects than the performance, the person in the front. So we'll have you answer that, and then we'll wrap up for today. So thank you. Carmen, go ahead.
Could you touch on aspects for students who are more production or stage management focused, admissions process or selection advice for the student and the IEC who are helping them?
So are we saying, is the question more focused on through the application process, the admissions process, you mean?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, with production and design students, which would be stage managers, set, lighting, costume, and sound designers primarily. There are some schools that have even more specific departments like wig and makeup design, or costume technology. There's some like really cool production and design courses out there, or pathways out there. So for those, the artistic review basically will be an interview with the faculty of the department and a portfolio of the work the student has done. So there we're talking about, like I was mentioning before about the like website, you might bring your laptop to your artistic review with you. You might have a sketchbook that you have also, or like an inspiration book which has like swatches of material. If you'd say you're a costume designer, swatches of material and some plant stuff and pictures from magazines, and you've got all this stuff because you did the costumes for a show that you did in your high school, and this is all the work you did for that show. So maybe that's something you bring as part of your portfolio. If you're a lighting designer or a set designer, maybe you've got photos of work that you did. You're like, yeah, I did the set for this student performance that we did of a student written show, and I did the set, and here's some photos of us building it, and here's some photos of it during the show, like so that you could see it in action. And there are for stage managers, they'll ask you for, let's say, a prompt book, which is the script with all the cues and notes but cues that have to be called, because that Broadway show, up in the booth behind the audience, the stage manager is in there calling the show, we call it, where they're saying, go Q3 to the lighting department, go lighting Q3, and then they hit go, and then the lights change. So they have to have a very organized script and cues and that kind of stuff. So these are the kinds of things that they ask. And I think, though, the conversations that they have in these interviews are really to get into the artist head, to get up into their creative head, and the materials, that the portfolio materials basically become like they become supporting materials for the conversation, because they really want to hear the students talk about the work they do. And they might say like, oh, like I'm telling you about this, here's a photo of that, here's a picture of that the student says, or maybe the faculty member is flipping and says, oh, this looks really interesting, tell me about that. So it's supporting material, but they really want to hear them. How do they talk about the work that they do? How did they arrive at this? What were the challenges on this show that you're talking about to make a costume that worked for that actor? Because that seems to be challenging. Those are the kinds of conversations I think that are happening. So they get also very comprehensive artistic review. Directors are very similar in that way too. So they're all getting very comprehensive, just like the acting kids are, or the musical theater kids are, where they're singing, dancing, and acting. So they're all lovely in that way. I like the artistic reviews.
That sounds really I don't want to say fun, but it generates that enthusiasm, and that authenticity comes through too, so that they can say, but it sounds like they have to have done something. It can't be, oh, I want to get into lighting design, or I want to get into this, that they've had to at least had some kind of exposure.
I would say, yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I think you're right. I think, but sometimes the question is, if you have not yet designed a show, pick a show that you would like to design and go through the motions of it, so we can see how your thought process works. So that is sometimes an option for just what you're saying, right? So they feel that they can still go into it and learn, even if they haven't had the opportunity to fully do it.
True. So it keeps that door open for those students as well. So, Chris, thank you so much. This has just been so enlightening. It is a topic we could talk about, and as you could see, there are lots of good questions. We will have this available on cindymcdonald.com. I'll also link, and Carmen's put it in the notes, to the interview that you and I did for the UCLA, talking a little more in detail about BA, BFA, and those kinds of programs. So please check into that as well. Check into Chris's website and his social media, because I know you will be delighted. And Chris, when you arrange those New Zealand tours of those programs, let me know, because
I will let you know.
I will be first to sign up.